the Indiana Hoosiers are still in it for Braylon Mullins.
You are Locked On Hoosiers, your daily podcast on the Indiana Hoosiers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in. It is the Locked On Hoosiers podcast. I'm your man, Jacob Goins. I appreciate you being here, making this your first listen each and every day. We are a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, which is your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started. Well, thank you so much for being here, for making this your first listen, your first watch each and every day. Shout out to all of my everydayers who show up every single day. I see you, I hear you, and as I always tell you, I do appreciate you. And what's important today is that the Indiana Hoosiers, and you need to know this, and everybody else needs to know this, the Indiana Hoosiers are still in it for Braylon Mullins. And I think they're in a good spot as well. We've got that for you today. Plus, I've seen a lot of conversation in the YouTube comments, which is great, by the way, about guards versus bigs. What brings more success? And I think we should talk about what brings more success in particular to Indiana. We'll have that for you as well. Plus, fall camp wrapping up for Indiana football. Curt Cignetti talked to the media a while back, and we'll see what he had to say. What is he seeing so far from his team? We'll have that for you today as well. Well, Braylon Mullins, one of the best players in the 2025 class. He's one of the best shooting guards, if not the best shooter in the 2025 class. He did an interview with Peegs.com, which is the Indiana 247 side. If you haven't checked this out, go check them out, okay? Peegs.com. And they did a wonderful job. Jeff Rabjohns did a fantastic job, as he always does. And they were able to get a few questions into him just about his recruitment and update on the recruiting process. And he had a lot of interesting things to say. Did the 6'5", 180-pound shooting guard. And I think it reminds us that we're still in a really good spot for Braylon Mullins here in Bloomington. A, because he says we're still one of his top schools, but B, it's the way that he's starting to talk about other programs as well. I just have a really good feeling about this guy. And so I'm not going to read all of it. I want you to go and check it out and subscribe to them and be a part of that, Peegs.com, because, again, they do a phenomenal job. And so I'm not going to give all of it away, but there are a few things I want to highlight here. Okay, they start talking about, playing throughout the summer and what that process looks like and how you balance that with recruiting. They asked him about his UConn visit, which is really interesting. He says, there's a question that asks, how do you approach what you take away from your visits? Do you take notes or after each one? Like, what's that process look like? And here's what Braylon Mullins says. He says, I take it one at a time, step by step. I want to do pros and cons with my family to see what fits me overall and where I want to spend a year or two on a college campus when I'm in college. But I'm definitely taking it step by step, writing notes down as I go. Couple of more things that I want to hit on. They asked him they asked him about Indiana, right? And how are things going with the Hoosiers? Because that's what everybody wants to know. That's what we talk about. That's what sites talk about. That's what fans are talking about is, okay, what's happening with Braylon Mullins? And here's what he has to say. He says, quote, they're definitely good. I went there a few weeks ago on an unofficial visit again with Coach Woodson and Coach Walsh. We went through a lot of player development stuff and how they're changing their offense. How about that, Hoosier fans? How about that? Does that not sound like music to your ears a little bit? Something that I've been preaching and praying and begging for months on this show, even dating back to the end of this past season. I was asking for things to change because the offense just didn't work. And yes, it was because lack of talent and lack of execution, I think, were a big part of it. But man, if they're changing their offense for a guy like Braylon Mullins, doesn't that make him feel good? Wouldn't that make you feel good if a big-time program, a historic place like Indiana, is saying, hey, man, we're going to orchestrate our offense around you, through you. That is what tells me that Indiana's in a good spot for Braylon Mullins. And they kind of asked him a little bit more, and he says they're running a lot of different stuff than they've been running the past 2 or 3 years when I've been watching. It's definitely a good thing to watch. I want them to succeed. Quote, they're definitely one of my top schools. How about that? How about that? So not only does he just go out and say that that Indiana's one of his top schools, he was on another unofficial visit a while back to see the coaches and the team and the players and talk about game planning, not even just talking about the campus or NIL or anything like that. They're talking ball. And that's what's really exciting here too. And they've proven to him already, hey, it's going to be a little bit different than what you saw a year ago, because that's what's in his brain. That's what he's thinking about is, I like this place. It's pretty cool. Coaches are sweet. Fan base is awesome. Tradition's there, but last year wasn't all that cool. Last year wasn't all that great. So you have to convince him that it's going to be different. And not just Braylon Mullins, all the different recruits. But for the number 1 shooting guard in the country, the best shooter in the class, yeah, you got to show why you're going to make him better and how you're going to make him the focal point of the offense. He goes into a lot of detail here. Again, I'll let you go check that out at pigs.com. But they asked him when he's going to decide. And sounds like it's going to be before his first game, which is late November. So he's got some visits scheduled late October, but he does admit that he's not going on an Alabama visit. He's not going on a Kansas visit or a Purdue visit. So think about that as well. He's still got some big names in there like Indiana, Duke, North Carolina, Kentucky, those types of places. But he is taking his Indiana official, and there's a couple of big names that are not in there. I say all of that to say this. Indiana is still in a really, really good spot for Braylon Mullins. And I think Braylon Mullins is still in a good spot for Indiana. I think it's a mutual feeling right now. And I believe that the Hoosiers can pull this off. They're not done. This battle is not won. It's not over by any means. You cannot call off the dogs and prop your feet up and wait for him to come walking through the door with a signed NLI. That's not how this is going to work. You have to do everything you can. You play NCAA football 25, send the house, right? You know what I'm talking about. That's what you have to do right now. And if Mike Woodson and the Indiana Hoosiers continue doing what they're doing, I think you have a really good chance to bring Braylon Mullins home and talk about a domino effect. That'd be the first of many. Well, coming up on Locked on Hoosiers, sticking on the recruiting conversation, lots of you have been talking about guards versus big men. Who should the Hoosiers be recruiting in the future for 2025 and beyond? We'll have that coming up for you next on Locked on Hoosiers. Today's episode of Locked on Hoosiers is brought to you by Ibotta. Sandals, sunscreen, snacks for the kids. What do these have in common? You're probably buying a ton again, even now as the summer winds down because it's still hot outside. But don't stress about the cost, all right? Use Ibotta and get cash back on all of your purchases when you stock up on all of your summer and late summer essentials. Ibotta is a free app that lets you earn cash back every time that you shop. Earn on hundreds of items from groceries to beauty supplies, even toys. So you can make sure you're beating inflation no matter what you're purchasing, because inflation's real these days. Right now, Ibotta is offering our listeners $5 just for trying Ibotta by using the code LOCKEDONCollege when you register. So just go to the App Store or Google Play Store and download the free Ibotta app and start earning cash back and use the code LOCKEDONCollege. Okay, that's important. Use our code LOCKEDONCollege. That's IBOTTA, Ibotta, in the Google Play or App Store, and use our code LOCKEDONCollege. Welcome back into Locked on Hoosiers. Thank you so much again for being here. Shout out to all of my everydayers, those of you that come back each and every day. You're the reason the show is growing like it is. So thank you very much for being a part of that. If you want to find a couple of ways to support the show for free, since, hey, the show is free for you every single day. on audio, you can subscribe over there, follow us on there, turn on notifications, whatever platform that you're on, okay? It doesn't matter to me. I appreciate you being there. So find a way to follow. That way you never miss new episodes on the audio platforms. And then if you're on video, watching on YouTube right now, you can like this video. That's the first step. Second step, comment down below. Do you think Braylon Mullins ends up at Indiana? Will he become an Indiana Hoosier? I want to hear your thoughts in the YouTube comments below. And then the best way to help us out, hit our logo, our show logo, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. We're growing like crazy, and I want you to be a part of it. That's how you become an everydayer, is subscribing to the channel. So thank you so much for doing all of that and supporting us at Locked On Hoosiers. Well, I mentioned I've seen this happen in a couple of the comments on YouTube videos and some of the reels that we've been posting, so be sure you check those out as well. There are people, you, the fans, talking about whether Indiana should be recruiting more guards or more big men, because we've had a lot of conversations here about both, right? We've talked about Malachi Moreno going to Kentucky. We've talked about the possibility of Eric Reeby getting on campus for a big-time visit, or the Nate Aments of the world, and then you start working into the guards of Braylon Mullins and Trent Sisley and those types of guys. But which one's more important? Which one means more to the future of Indiana basketball? And I agree. Oh, my goodness. Excuse me. I agree with so many of you in both camps here. There are so many people that say you've got to have a dominant big man. Dominant big men are your anchor. They are your confidence position, right? There's somebody you can count on each and every game. 100% agree. Look at a Zach Edey, for example. As much as we disliked him being at Purdue, he was a really good player, and he made Purdue a really good basketball team, and they could go to him time and time again. And he helped them make big runs in the NCAA tournament, but they never won, right? They never got over the hump. And there's been a lot of historic big men in this conference over the last few decades. I don't have to tell you that. The other camp here is you need elite guard play to win in March. It's what a lot of people say. TV analysts, radio analysts, podcast people, fans like you who are more knowledgeable than a lot of those people anyway. You always say you need elite guard play to win in March. And it's absolutely true. You have to have elite guard play to win in the NCAA tournament. Look at all the guards historically that have won national championships or won big games for their team. Some of my favorites outside of Indiana that I can remember watching, the Kemba Walkers of the world. How about Mario Chalmers at Kansas, right? You remember that team that was good, but Chalmers won it for them. I mean, he was doing crazy things for them. Those are the guys I think about. The Shabazz Napiers at UConn, like those types of guards that win you big games and win you championships. And yeah, Indiana needs some of those again. We've gone through this little bit of a lull. It's time to get some of those types of guys back. But I want it to be a combination. Why not both is what I ask you. Why not have 3 or 4 elite guards on the roster and also have an elite big man that you can count on as well? Why have just one or the other? I understand a lot of people say, well, if you're going to focus on one, let's go one way or the other. I totally understand. But I think in this day and age, teams and programs can afford to go for both. I feel that that's the case because of roster roster openings, NIL, transfer portal. Like, you can afford to go after every position multiple times. And look at what Indiana's doing in the 2025 class. They're going after great guards. Jalen Harrelson's, who's a guard forward, Braylon Mullins, Trent Sisley, like those types of players. And then you look at the Eric Reeby's and Malachi Moreno's. I know he committed to Kentucky, but just using him as an example of players that we've gone after and now players that we're still going after. Why not all of them? Why not have a chance to get them all? Because you can do that now. I feel like you can stack talent more at some places than you could in the past. I know Kentucky and those types of programs did it for a long time, but I'm saying now you can convince 3 top 15 players to come to your program if you've got the money to do it. And you can be successful any way you want to. I think for Indiana in particular, though, you need all of it, especially like Braylon Mullins is saying, if the offense is changing a little bit, then yeah, you better have some guards, because think about what's happened the last couple of years. It's been big men that have won us games, and that's kind of it. I mean, you're going back to the Trace Jackson Davis where, yeah, give it to the big guy and get out of the way. Give it to Khalil Ware, get out of the way. I hope this isn't the case of just give it to Umar Ballo and get out of the way. You can have that at times. That's fine. And yeah, there are certain situations where you want that. Yeah, Umar, go. You're bigger than everybody else. Shove them out of the way, get a bucket, and go down the other end of the floor. That's fine. But that can't be your entire identity. It can't be, if Malik doesn't score 20 points, we're doomed. That can't be the case this year or moving forward. And so if you change that and you say, okay, we're going to go and get 2 or 3 5-star guards moving forward in our offense, sure, we can have those big men, but if we need a 3 or we need a layup or we need an assist or we need a steal or we need a bucket, we need a play, we need a leader on the team, we've got it. And so, yeah, that's why you recruit both. That's why you try to get the best of the best from the guard spot and the best of the best from the big spot. And as I mentioned, with transfer portal now, if you don't land one in high school recruiting, it's okay. And I want to make a note about that too. I won't go into as deep on this. Maybe we'll do an episode on this later. But I've seen people too saying that high school recruiting is not important anymore because of the transfer portal. And I have to disagree. I do. I have to disagree on that. I know where you're going with that, and I understand your reasoning. I just don't agree. I still think high school recruiting is crucial for football, basketball, baseball, any of the sports, because the transfer portal is such a gamble. High school recruiting is too, but the portal is such a gamble. And again, we're not going to get into this super deep. We don't have time for it today, but I think it needs to be a healthy balance of both. Basketball is a little different because each player is so impactful. I've told you that before. My everydayers know this. Each player is so impactful and so important because of their role with limited players on the floor at one time and limited players on the roster. Football, you go get a defensive back out of the transfer portal and he ends up sucking, then all right, you're fine. You didn't really hurt yourself all that much. If you go and get a power forward in the portal and he's terrible, then or just doesn't work out, yeah, then you hurt yourself pretty bad. Same thing in high school recruiting. But with the high school recruits, you have more time typically to mold them into what you want them to be. Transfer portal guys are kind of who they are. Doesn't mean they can't get better. Doesn't mean they can't improve. But you kind of see what I'm saying here. So overall, you have to have a good combination from the portal and high school recruiting and guards and your big men. For Indiana in particular, I hear what you're saying. Keep doing what we're doing in the bigs, but we have got to go get some elite guards for the future of this program. Well, coming up in our final segment on Locked On Hoosiers, going to the football side of things because fall camp winding down, just about over for Indiana football, because guess what? Next week is game week. What does Curt Cignetti see from this program? What are the things he's saying that he likes and dislikes right now? I'll have that for you in our final segment on Locked On Hoosiers. Today's episode of Locked On Hoosiers is brought to you by FanDuel. You've heard us talk about FanDuel a lot. They're America's #1 sports book, so of course we're going to talk about them. Well, we have something a little different for you today. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. I have it. It's fantastic. I promise. It's something you want to be a part of, that NFL Sunday Ticket. Then, with a YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel at any time. So visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn. That's FanDuel.com/LOCKEDON to download America's #1 sportsbook. Final segment here on Locked On Hoosiers. Thank you again for being here. My everydayers, you mean the world to me. So thank you so much for doing that and showing up each and every day. Audio, video, doesn't matter how you get us. Just a reminder that we're free every single day. And this is your first listen. I know that. But if you're looking for your second listen, your second watch today, type in Locked On College Football. Once you're done here, of course. Type in Locked On College Football. Spencer McLaughlin does a phenomenal job over there talking all things college football. The biggest headlines, biggest storylines, the hottest of takes. He's very passionate now, so go check him out. He does a great job getting you ready for week 0. This weekend is week 0 of college football. Isn't that crazy to you? So go check him out at Locked On College Football. And then your third listen, your third watch can be Locked On College Basketball with Isaac and Andy. Well, speaking of college football, Curt Cignetti had some things to say about fall camp as it is winding down and getting to the end of that. And now that they are starting to look towards game week for Indiana football, treating this week as a somewhat game week, I'm sure. And then next week is the real deal. And Cignetti's got some quotes that he had in his press conference. You know, he gave some coach speech. You got to fight human nature and still working through some things and yada, yada. But I like some of the things that he says. He says, we have a way of doing things. He goes on to say, we have a way we play the game so that at the end of the game, in those moments, we can play our best football. It's all about guys doing what they're supposed to do, and the whole becomes greater than the sum of its parts. They've got to have confidence and belief, be able to compartmentalize, put the last play behind them, focus on this play, and then do it again and again and again. And the final quote I want to give you here, it says, I really think that we've made very significant, tangible strides. I think the players like the way we practice, and we're getting there. So what does that tell you? What does that tell you? What's your initial reaction to hearing that? I'll tell you what I think. I think Cignetti's still having to implement a lot. I think he's still teaching a lot. He's still training a lot. He sees where it's going. And from what that tells me and what we've heard him say in the past, he believes his process is going to work, especially work here because it's worked everywhere else. But we're not there yet. And that's just a fact. We are not there yet as an Indiana football team or a program. But guess what? Nobody expected us to be. He didn't expect us to be there yet. And that's okay. Like, there's still time for that to happen. You still have an entire season to figure things out. You've got a couple of early games that you can get your feet underneath you. I think a winnable game at UCLA in week 3. Like, it's going to be okay. But he still seems confident to me. It's not, and if he is worried, he's hiding it, but he doesn't seem worried. He doesn't come off worried to me. Seems like he knows he still has a lot of work to do, but he's impressed with what's happened so far. But I also think that Curt Cignetti is not going to be somebody that just comes out and gives all the praise in the world and is just super excited, happy, smiling, just, man, we had the perfect day of practice. Nothing went wrong. These guys are incredible. I just don't think that type of day is ever going to happen. You're never going to see those emotions, hear those words, or see that on the face of head coach Curt Cignetti. And you know what? That's fine. That's not a requirement of this job, right? I want him to tell us what's happening. Tell me what's going on. Be honest with us. And let us know what's happening here. And I think he's done a decent job of that. Yeah, he's got a little coach speak in there, but he has a way of doing things, and he wants this team to get there because that's priority number 1. In the future, down the road, this season, off season, and next season, yeah, he'll probably have the opportunity to talk a little bit more in detail about particular players and different sets and who's better where and what's going to work and not work on offense and defense and special teams. Like, he'll have the luxury of talking like that a little bit more. But right now, he's just trying to get the characteristics that he wants into this team and into this program. And that's exactly what he's saying right here. Like, we have a way of doing things and we've got to do that. We've made strides, but we're not there yet. So we got a lot of work to do is what he's telling us. And so I want you to keep that in mind as we wrap up the show here. Keep that in mind that he hasn't talked a lot of specifics. He does a little bit when he's asked about it, but I don't know if that's his priority. And he's still, yes, he's putting in plays and developing players and things like that. I'm not saying he's not, but he's trying to whip them into shape at the end of the day, if I'm just being honest with you. That's what he's trying to do, mentally, physically, and emotionally. And that's step one, because then once you do that, then they'll understand where you're coming from. Then they will understand, okay, this is why he's doing what he's doing. This is why he says this. This is why we're doing whatever it is that we're doing. You've got to get them to understand that before you try to implement the entire process. And I think they're doing that right now. And hopefully the players on the team are responding to that, and recruits will respond to that as well. But I'm excited for the season opener. Less than 2 weeks now. It's next Saturday. Isn't that crazy? Gosh, I can't wait for college football to be back. Well, that's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Hoosiers. Thank you again for being here. I'm having a blast on this show, and I hope that you're having a lot of fun listening and watching every single day. All of my audio listeners, thank you so much. Follow us there. Turn on notifications. Do what you got to do to never miss a new episode, okay? Same thing for those of you watching on the video version as well. Like this video, comment down below. How many wins does Indiana football get this year? Let me know in the YouTube comments. Plus, does Braylon Mullins end up an Indiana Hoosier? Want to hear from you on that as well. And then subscribe to the YouTube channel. Hit our show logo, hit subscribe. Takes 2 seconds. It's free, and that's the best way to support this show. That is free to you each and every day. All right, we'll be back tomorrow, Hoosier fans. So until then, stay safe, and I'll talk to you later.